Well, beautiful. Thank you to everybody that is joining us live and those that are going to listen to this later. We absolutely, absolutely love these community meetups. I mean, they are intentional, they are conversational, they are connection driven because it's real people, real life, making real things happen. And I really enjoy bringing people on each and every month that are really leading the dance, right? Sharing their experience and their perspective. And as a community, we all grow from it. So it's my pleasure to introduce you guys to Brian John. He's the founder of Echo and Athena. He has a passion for love-led leadership, so he's going to be talking to us a little bit about that today. Brian, before we get started, my friend, one thing we always do is we let everybody that's on the call that is here to support you and be part of this introduce themselves so that you know who is committed to you and you can commit to them, and we can create a conversation. So I'll leave that. My name is Adam Griggs. I am the moderator today. I have a company called Clarify, and I'm just appreciative of this community. I love everything about it and everything that comes out of this. So thank you for being here. I'm going to turn this over to Patrick Kagan.
Thank you, Adam. Brian, I've been looking forward to this for some time, so I love the whole spirit of what you do. I'm the founder of PK Solutions Group, and we specialize in leadership and sales momentum. And I'm just going to sit back and listen and learn.
Mr. Patrick, we appreciate you. Emma.
Yeah, hi, I'm Emma Lawrence, and I founded Life is Coaching You. I'm a certified life coach, and I mostly focus on the transition between burnout and your sustainable, inspired life.
Very impactful and important, of course. So thank you, Emma, for being here and being part of the conversation. Patty Farmer.
So my name is Patty Farmer. I am a marketing and media strategist, coach, consultant, and speaker. I really love helping people to make their marketing profitable, not painful. I'm really excited to be here. I love this community so much. I think I learn every single time, but I'm really excited about hearing you today, Brian. I think this is going to be a super great topic, and I can't wait to hear everything you have to say. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. I appreciate everybody that's here on the call today. And again, those that are listening, a reminder, if you show up to these calls, these meetups, cameras on, cameras off, we're open canvas here, just being part of the conversation and sharing the energy. And we have some amazing influential leaders in our community that contribute all the time here today. So thank you guys for being here. Brian, talk to us about who you are and what you've got going on, man. Let's hear the backstory. What brought you to founding Echo and Athena?
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for being here today. There's nothing greater than that which you can give than your love and your time. And just so very much appreciate it. So my background is, I could go way back, but no one wants to hear all of those stories. But we'll just start up. Trust me. But I will share with you that, I grew up in a fairly blue collar area, Youngstown, Ohio, where fitting in meant being very rigid in how you presented yourself and how you decided to lead life. Things were very conventional, and I was a very unconventional person. And so I struggled with not fitting in, but also being able to connect with people. And so throughout my life, I was really working on the concept of enoughness, on becoming enough in who I am. And so that led me to chase success. And I think we can all resonate with the concept of chasing success and getting something and attaining a status. And then when you do, there's supposed to be this euphoric filled feeling of, I've done it. Life feels good. Life feels great. And oftentimes the opposite is true. We attain something and we're looking for it to mean more than what it actually is. So what I ended up doing is I went into education and took the fast track to becoming a principal, became a principal and took over a school that was struggling. We were actually a year away from the state imposing sanctions and potentially becoming very invasive. And what was unusual is that this is happening in a very high performing district. So a friend of mine who was the superintendent hires me with the idea that, hey, I need you to turn this thing around. And by the way, I have ALS. I am resigning my position as soon as I hire you. And I felt a great burden with that, because not only was here's my friend who was given a terminating life diagnosis, but he was relying on me. Under all of that, I was relying on myself to prove my own worth. After 3 years, and not only with my efforts, but the efforts of an amazing team, we truly turned that building around, turned the scores around, student growth, student experience, all of those things. And at that point in time, I became extremely disillusioned to the point to where I was dealing with a very severe depression. But I was great at wearing the mask. No one had any idea how much struggle I was going through in that idea of, I just did something that was supposed to be my opus, my masterpiece, and why doesn't it feel good? It didn't feel good because I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good about who I was, about where I was going, and it is really a reflection point for me looking back and how oftentimes we hire people into leadership who they have demons, they have things they're struggling with, but there's no support to be vulnerable. There's no support to be authentic. And there's very, very little support, if any, to go on that road of making mistakes, learning from them, and continuing to grow. So as I went through all of that and I was struggling with my own depression, what came forth was a very simple concept. It was friends of mine who are, we all have those ultra positive friends. This is these guys. They're just positive about everything. And they're some of the most incredible people I've ever known. They shared with me a concept called Word of the Year. And Word of the Year, the whole idea behind it is forget about resolutions. Just focus on one word and just let that be what you do this year. Well, I chose the word kindness, not because I felt I needed it, but because I felt the world needed it. And this truly was a step in a direction of experiencing neuroscience in a very practical and implemented process. So I focus on this word kindness for a year. And what was super interesting was it changed not only how I interacted with the world, but it changed how I interacted with myself. And the idea of kindness grew. It led me down different paths to understanding more about energy, to understanding more about who we are, to understanding more about the creative spark that exists in all of us. And I found that that was very prevalent around, what people are doing in the entrepreneurial sector. And to some extent, it was present in the public sector as well as the private corporate sector, but there was something missing. And oftentimes I think it's important that those things that agitate us a little bit are essentially an internal calling. And what I was getting agitated with was very direct and specific. Here's how you lead in a way that does not allow someone to have boundaries, that does not allow someone to show up fully, that doesn't allow them to be authentic. And then I look back throughout history and you see the greatest people and the greatest leaders are always the ones who lead with heart. This is not a new idea. This is something more along the lines of, I get to talk about this, I get to share this. And the story arc is essentially, I hear all these people on social media and YouTube videos and even conferences talking about, here's how you lead, here's what you do. And they talk in very granular strategies and ideas and concepts. And then, of course, the culture movement happened where we started talking about, well, culture eats strategy for lunch. But yet, when we talked about culture, it was all about how everyone else behaved, not necessarily how leaders behaved. And it forced me to come to terms with two very important things that really incorporate what I am doing right now and what I'm here to share. And that is, number one, that as much as we've been taught from when we were little that we are all followers. I mean, you think about follow the leader, one leader, bunch of followers. Everyone identifies with being a follower, and even the biggest CEOs out there, have an idea of there's a higher power that they're following. But ultimately, if we are to embrace the duality of being a follower, that means we also have to embrace the duality, other side of the coin of being a leader. And every single person is a leader. A leader is not judged by the number of followers. A leader is judged by the quality of what they are doing for those who follow them. And when you think about that, who can we guarantee will follow any one individual? That is the self. So the first concept that I had to come to terms with was the fact that everyone is a leader, and you are responsible to lead yourself first. The second piece of it is you're hearing about all these people talking about leadership, and they're just coming from a variety of walks of life, but very few have actually been in the trenches. Very few have actually been in a leadership role within an organization. And so when we're talking about leadership, it became very nebulous. It became very vague. It was spoken of in platitudes. And instead of doing that, I really started to say, you know what, we need to do that, and we need to talk about what things look like practically. And that led me to the realization that Echo and Athena needed to exist. And it needed to be focused on helping people by uplifting themselves and taking that position of, I can uplift myself. I can elevate my standard and who I am by engaging in the most powerful force that we have as human beings, which is love. And far too often, people have qualified love to be this cupidy thing, or even puppy lovish type of thing. But love is real. It is practical. It is powerful. It gets people to do things and activate courage that they never knew they had. It's self-sacrificing as well as self-preserving. It is strong. It is focused, and it incorporates all of the aspects of being masculine or being feminine. It is not a one-sided type of concept. So the idea of love-led leadership was born out of, we are all leaders, and in order to show up authentically and fully and practically, we need to start with ourselves first. And that's where Echo and Athena and love-led leadership was born, within the reflection and multitude of conversations with people who were CEOs and entrepreneurs, as well as my own experiences of being a principal, being a director, and those types of things.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that backstory. I really, you can just hear the energy coming out of your voice, by the way, as you describe what you're doing and why you're doing it. And there's so much power to that. I mean, first of all, your perspective coming out of the corporate realm and being in education and seeing the growth of the next generation, and this juggling of, we're going to fit in the box, but we shouldn't fit in the box. We've got the identity, but we don't. You know, it's powerful because you have that expertise and that experience. You've been in the trenches, like you said, and you're leading by example first and foremost. And we always want to talk about, like, what's the big focus, what's the big need, and where are we headed with it, right? And awareness is a big deal right now. And it's not just awareness in our needs of our communities and those around us. It's awareness of our own needs and our own boundaries.
Yes.
and our mental wellness, right? And so there's this weird liability that is created when we take on personas or we take on positions where we have a superpower and we want to engage that superpower, and then we have an alter ego, which is the person that hides at night. And you have to ask yourself, am I jealous of one or the other? And that's not a good problem to have. So I love that what Echo and Athena does is teach people how to balance that properly by looking at themselves first and really inspiring those that don't know that they're leaders yet to take inventory and take a considerable amount of elevation on themselves and just bring themselves into the light and stop being jealous of those alter egos. And if there is something amiss, if there's something wrong, maybe change is needed, or maybe transitions needed, or maybe, you know what, maybe I just need a hand. And that's why we titled this The Climb, because really everything that you're about, Brian, is helping people climb out of those trenches and elevate each other and climb up to the next level of, love-led leadership. And I love what you do there, man.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you hit on a really important point, is that anytime we're in these areas of distress or dis-ease in our growth and our climb, I think far too often we just view it as, oh, well, things are falling apart on me, or I'm really in the rut right now. And what they're essentially, they're messengers. They're messengers of your own alignment to being your authentic self. And to be able to sit back and take stock and say, and have the strength of self to say, hey, I need a little help here, or I'm going through something here, or this is bothering me. Why is it bothering me? And I need to not assign all of my own personal choice and power away from that, or to that, and abdicate what I can do. And I'm not saying there aren't times that people truly are being impressed upon by systems and policies and things like that, but ultimately there always is a choice to be made by the individual to help them elevate, to help those around them elevate. And love-led leadership is really 3 very specific tenets of: 1, loving yourself, which includes boundary work, which includes courage to face past issues, which includes all of the things built around wellness. And whether that's going to be how someone conducts their interactions, whether it's how they conduct all the different areas of their life, there's that piece. And then the second piece is really about, how do we love those people who are around us? How do we empower them? I will never forget the second superintendent I worked for when I was a principal. The first one, right, wrong, or indifferent, you knew exactly what the expectations were. The expectations were show up 15 minutes early, have a jacket and tie on, and keep stuff off his desk. Right, wrong, or indifferent, there's a lot of safety in knowing that. And then there lies a lot of power, a lot of choice that you can make in how you execute those things. The second superintendent I worked for, and I bear him no ill will, it was his own growth process, but came in and no one knew what the expectations were. No one knew how to maintain the safety of having that position. And so you start to see a lot of infighting taking place, one-upsmanship. Culture was impacted, obviously. But once you truly love yourself and you are able to show up authentic and whole, you are then able to love on the people who comprise the team or the people in your world, and provide them with the expectations, the understanding of boundaries, the communication of here's what you need them to do. And then you get to unleash them and their creative power, and let them go be their authentic self, and how they can grow and touch other people's lives. And then the third tenet is super simple. it's derived from the idea of servant leadership, but it's a lot more specific than that in the sense of it is about listening to your employees or your team members, letting them have a turn in the spotlight, removing obstacles so that they can love and touch people that you will never be able to touch. And it's the idea of we're going to take, instead of throwing one stone into the middle of a pond and let that stone be like the king stone that ripples everything out, now you're talking about a multitude of stones hitting the water and being able to ripple out and to get to places that you will never be. And that's part of the wholeness of that first step. In order to allow other people to shine, you have to be in a place where you're whole, where you're not coming from deficit, and where you're able to tell your ego that it's okay to sit to the side on this one and let someone else shine, because it has no bearing on who you are, but it has everything to do on everything to do with the energy that you bring and the empowerment you bring in uplifting those people around you to do the same for others. So it has a very chain reaction process within it, but it's so super practical, and it's simple in understanding, a little more complex in growth process in implementation.
Yeah, and you know, everything you're talking right now is just, I mean, it seems like it would be incredibly easy, right? And it's not always easy, but it is meaningful work. And I think that that's important and validating, because when you're working inside of a corporation or a business, or even on your own in the trenches, you know, you were talking about safety and expectations. We set expectations for ourselves. We set expectations for those that are around us. We set expectations for those that work with us, for us, and lead us. And sometimes those are superficial expectations, right? They're kind of taken for granted. And some of us harbor ourselves in that safety environment. And you're never going to have true growth or true impact if you don't have a leadership that helps you feel like that you matter, first of all, and that you're okay to ask questions and improve upon it if you're following the expectations, right? You know, the Fearless organization allows you to ask questions and make suggestions if you are involved in actually pushing people up, right? Leading with love. And, you know, one of the things that you talked about was asking for help as a, you know, a lot of people see that as a vulnerability, as a kryptonite, but really it's the shining light. It's the moment where you realize that this person actually cares about what they're doing. They know they can't do it all. And here's a validation moment for me to help them. Here's a validation moment for them, because now they know how to do it and they get it done. And then beyond that, I mean, in any organization, and I can tell you from my experience, any organization at all, peer-to-peer camaraderie, leadership, it's at all levels. If you find people that really jive with you and you feel loved on, you will always find success. And at the end of the day, I mean, we don't want to be alone, right? We're humans of creature, or humans of connection, right? Creatures of connection. We live in communities, we build communities, we want to interact. And we're getting further and further away from that in the world of business, right? We've got tech, we've got AI, we've got hybrid realities, we've got things that are segmenting us. And it's very difficult to convey a feeling of love through the screen, or a feeling of love on somebody that's a subordinate, right? That's got to get something done, that's pressured by timelines and rigor, unless you do it the right way, which is having a desire to inspire before you require. If you have a desire to inspire them before you require them to do anything, then you can always approach it the right mentality, like what you said, having that word of the year, having that desire to really impact them in a meaningful way that aligns with both you and both the needs of the people around you. And I love that that's what you do, Brian.
Thank you.
And, you know, one of the things I got to point out too is you said it's not just about getting these people and these members, these collective creatures that we call humans around us, right? aware of what love actually is. It's love, and, you know, and we talked about setting vision at the beginning of the year. We had goals, and we talked about managing those goals and expectations. And then we went from that to accountability partners and talking about improv, which is leading to yes and I love that that's what you do, because after you've created this awareness, getting it into practical use, getting it into the hands of leaders and sub-leaders and peer, you know, camaraderie groups. I mean, that right there, that's how you make the ripple effect grow. That's how you see all those stones go into the water. So I'd love if you shared a little bit more on kind of how you do that at Echo and Athena, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you nailed something. One of my favorite shows, and its ending, is Ted Lasso. And there's a line in which they talk about the phone and they say, "Never have we been so connected yet so further apart." And that is so very true in a lot of ways, social media, things like that. But when it comes down to it, when you're working with people who are in official decision making leadership roles, one of the things that seems to be a common theme is the stress regarding time. And that goes back to uh, feelings of enoughness, and it goes back to values, and it goes back to what those who, if there are people above you in the structure, on how you're treated in with those folks. So one of the things we talk about as we address all of this is we talk about values. Before we get into vision, we want to know what really matters to you before we can talk about the vision of how do you want to impact the organization, or how do you see your role. We want to know what do you really value, because no matter whatever values you have, if you at some point in time compromise those values, you are engaging in self-injurious behavior. And you are, in essence, creating a more difficult reality for yourself in being able to lay your head down on the pillow at night. So one of the questions that I always ask, and if I'm working with someone or if I am talking about someone becoming part of Echo and Athena, it's what are your values? And it's okay if they don't know it. But oftentimes people will say, well, faith, family, friends. That's wonderful. Those aren't your values. Those are platitudes you're spitting out. Like, if you yourself, in order to feel as though you are true, you are authentic, and you are bringing your best self forward, what really matters to you? And so there's an exercise that I go through with to help people see what those truly are. And I'll tell you, my top 3 values are love, integrity, and freedom. And when we look at leadership, so there's the advent of bringing someone in and understanding how they value things. If you value love, it is very easy to look at your schedule and say, okay, I am going to block off these times to go see people, have conversations, get to know who they are. And you have that aspect. And that also marries with integrity. So it's very easy for me to, as a leader, to spend time with folks. Some people are not wired that way, and it doesn't disqualify them to be in decision-making positions. What they have to essentially see is, how would this interact with the position that you're in? And so being able to see where people fit, why is that important to the value that you have, like one of your top 3 values? Why are they important to you? And being able to reprioritize time, because there is no substitute in the human experience for authentic, connected time. And it can't always, we like to start with the strategy of blocking out time, but it cannot always be on the leader's time. It may end up being in time of crisis. It may end up being just in the time that this one person who has never talked and shared with you before has come to your door and said, hey, do you have a minute? And you know full well you probably don't, but they're integral to what you're doing, to your value set, and you're going to acknowledge them and where they are. And there's strategies and ways to navigate that so that you don't feel like you're dropping the ball on your end. But there is no substitute for those connective conversations. So that's where we start. We start with values, and then we start with, okay, how do your values play out? What does that look like? Is your schedule reflective of your values? And is your interactions with the people that you are in the trenches with reflective of your values?
I love the way you stage that, because really, if you start with values, you can be aware and you know the values, which creates the obligation or the understanding, the respect that's going to take place in whatever relationship you're in. And then you get to lead with intention. And the intention is to uphold everybody's values, right? And understand their needs. You know, that's why we have so many people that take less salary to work remotely to be closer to their family, so they can have more freedom, so they can take mental wellness breaks. Or we have people taking unlimited PTO because they have a fear for a loved one and they want to be present to their needs, right? There's things we don't see on paper quite often, but their values align. And if leadership knows that, they'll never cross that line, and you never self-sabotage. And then vice versa. As a leader, it's okay to come out and tell them the exact same thing, right? If you have the same values, you know what? I agree with you. I personally like to take a Friday and just mind dump because I need it, right? And that's stuff that people need to be able to talk about, because then again, you set expectations and you get to lead with intention. And I love that that's how you've got everything staged, Brian. And I'm going to turn it over to Patrick because he's got his hand up, but I just wanted to give you kudos for everything you just said.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, I love how you frame it, and I keep hearing the word time. I love the way you frame this as, love is not Cupid love. And, like in a session I have coming up, I start with time equals love. And where you spend your time is what you love, and you need, so if you feel you have to make time to lead, you need to examine that. If your time is devoted to those people, I think that's a natural thing. And in this session, we're going to be looking at happiness gaps in the workplace. And there's a phrase I started with happiness creates dividends, but dividends don't always create happiness.
Mm.
And I think leaders, they start to embrace their own press, if you will. They start to look at leadership as a title or as something where they're wiser, and it's a role you play. But if you embrace the idea that happiness is really at the core of things and everyone can lead from their own seats, then your role is, like you said, to devote yourself to those and get obstacles out of their way. So I was curious, what are some tactics you give folks to embrace the idea of management as process and leadership as people? Like, how do you help people distinguish that and say, yeah, love is time. It's not hippy dippy hug a tree.
Great question. By the way, I love the fact how you have encapsulated happiness and dividends. I think that's very wise. So one of the things that I like to do in working with folks, and it's not necessarily just what I like to do, because I always tell folks, like, when they ask me, how are we going to approach things? We approach things based on where you are. We approach things based on what your priorities are. We approach things based on where you feel we need to work. So essentially, it's a personalization of what we're doing as coaches and as folks who are modeling how to lead. So, and just so that I make sure that I am locked in on what they need, I always have just that: share with me, let me share it back, go ahead and tell me where I may be off, and allowing them to have to help direct and have that sense of empowerment and ownership in the conversation, that this isn't being done to them, but this is a partnership. It is an egalitarian relationship. what we're going through. So that's the first part of it. And just so, if you wouldn't mind, can you restate the question so I make sure I answer exactly what you're asking?
Yeah, I was really asking like if there's tips you have where, you're a manager and I was looking at management as a process versus leadership as the people.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and either marrying those or distinguishing those.
Yes. So I think that, let me say this up front. It's going to be different for different people because of different values and different visions. However, when we talk about management, I always like to refer to management as decision-making positions. You have a greater seat at the table to make certain decisions that have larger impact than someone else. Leadership is people, but it's not strictly external. Leadership, the people leadership that needs to take place, and I'm so convinced of this because I became exponentially a better leader once I started working on the things that needed worked on within me. So I always talk to folks about, leadership is not a self-help book. Leadership is not trying to be like another leader. Leadership is courage in taking yourself into the spaces and places that may be uncomfortable for you. So in doing that, we also get to embrace the other side of that. We're also going to go into the spaces and places that are very empowering for you, where you feel there's a natural aptitude, where you can continue to grow and develop what you do very well. So there's that first aspect. When that aspect gets addressed, the ease of crossing over into the external leadership of people, to the external connection piece, becomes a much more natural place. So once we've done those things and we've been able to create a sense of strength of self, and that could be anything from anxiety reducing techniques. It could be anything from just providing more intention to the work we're doing. It can be inspiring conversations with those who are above you in the hierarchy of things. Anything to create that sense of safety, strength, and bedrock foundation to allow the leader to be the more authentic version of themselves. So by doing that work, now we get into okay, now I'm going to connect with you. Time is huge. But I also want to, when I say time is huge, I don't believe that crock-pot culture works. I think we are in the space and time now where those things are fun for some folks and are very off-putting for others. So when we talk about time, we are talking about not just work time. I was a big proponent as a leader and manager of saying, when the chips are down, be there. Be there for them. Be in the trenches with them. Be there supporting them. Make sure they know that they are safe to work through these issues. But then there's also the more informal time. And just having a conversation of get away from how's your weekend and get into so what do you like to do when you're not here? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your friendships. When you see something that may have a commonality for you, to get outside of, hey, I like that team too, and this is what I like about that team. And it's all about, I want to share me with you. But that's not leadership. That's impressing you upon them. Lead by loving them and asking about them, connecting with them, allowing the clues that you see in their workspaces, the clues that they give you in their conversation when you're in that informal setting, to ask more questions. Again, Ted Lasso reference, be curious. be curious. The moment you stop being curious about or with the people around you is the moment they feel a shift to where you think you've figured them out, you put them in a box, and they are essentially a widget. So that would be the first two things I would say. And I know it's a little bit, it's not as practical because we're lacking a very specific instance, but it is, you got to do the work on yourself to continue your growth and development so that when it is time to spend time with your people, with your teammates, with your team members, that you can be there for them as opposed to trying to present yourself in such a way to connect them from where you are, connect with where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question and answer, because really that takes us from the Band-Aid effect to validation and in working together, right? I'm not going to just fix your problem. I'm going to understand it. I'm not going to just tell you what to do. I'm going to help you feel like it's something that's worthy to do itself, right? Yeah. If people understand that, then you get things that are deeper, that last longer, and usually are experiential, and that always elevates any organization, no matter where you're at. I think about everything that you do, Brian. I think about like when you're at camp, right? You go into camp and the first thing all the counselors do is they sit all the kids down. They're like, all right, let's create some rules together, right? And everybody collaboratively comes up with the rules, and you just write down all the rules. They're like, all right, we made these rules together, so we're going to uphold them together. That's great. Like, now we know the structure and expectations, but what are we doing here? Like, really? And there's so many people inside of organizations that are asking that question. Like, what are we doing here? I know I've got these rules. I know I've got these timelines. I know I've got to show up and do these tasks, but what the heck is it for, right? And does it really matter to you that I'm here? Or and leaders ask themselves that more often than they want to admit. And so what you're doing is helping them to trace it back to their own values and really ask those curious questions. And you can bridge any gap to connection through curiosity. If you actually approach it with real, genuine curiosity, then you can have that love-led leadership that really aligns with everybody's values and doesn't overstep, right? Doesn't crush anybody's, superpower, which is to be themselves. So I appreciate you for that. And, Patrick, you put it in the chat, so I'll read it out loud here. You said, asking yourself, why is your why your why? Like, why did you set that up, right? Why is that your defining reason to exist in what you do? And that's a hard question to ask, right? Especially to ourselves. And more often than not, we spit out something quickly, Band-Aid effect, try to give somebody an answer. We got to get back to starting with values. So I really, really appreciate that. And I love that you started with, having a word of the year, creating awareness and taking inventory, working on yourself and leading from the front. I mean, that all comes full circle to really understanding and aligning that values have to overcome any obligation always. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point, the idea of when someone is in a point of crisis and being there with them and understanding it, there's all kinds of opportunities. There's opportunities in every difficulty. There's opportunities in every catastrophe. And those are so often overlooked because we're in the stress of the situation, as opposed to getting truly engaged and relaxed and coming into the situation. I can't tell you how many people I have been able to see their brilliance shine far beyond where I could go, because they're essentially the team member we need to work on the web page, and they're having a crisis, and I cannot help them other than providing moral support and being there with them and then shaking the trees that I could shake. But just supporting them and allowing them to walk down multiple paths and being right there for them until they find a solution. Sometimes that means everything to them, to know that the walls are crumbling, and not to be grandiose here, but the walls are crumbling, but you essentially are standing right next to them and you're holding up the ceiling. You will not let it crash on them. And those are the moments that value isn't spoken, it's felt. Connection isn't spoken, it's felt. Loyalty, trust, love is built in the moments where catastrophe is possible, but you get to prove who you really are, because those moments of stress reveal who you are and what your values are. And I love that you brought that up, because that truly is like, there's time you could lead from the front in those situations. At times you get to take a step back and let them lead and just hold that ceiling up, and they do something that is so special and so meaningful and overused word of the year, transformative to your organization or to the group that they serve. And the only one who knows you were there was that person. But that's all who needs to know that you were there.
You know, I appreciate you so much for that. You know, every obstacle is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to discover. It's an opportunity to engage, to support, to overcome, to learn, to find your shortcomings, weaknesses. All of that is truth. And you said you didn't want to be grandiose, but I'll say it out loud. Like, we're in a mental health crisis worldwide. Every single time you connect with somebody with genuine connection and genuine support, you're saving a life. Like, I'll just be totally honest, you're saving a life. And if you actually said it that way, more people would have more genuine conversations and more genuine connections, because we are creatures of connection. Like, we have to have each other. If we were in isolation, nothing would ever evolve, nothing would ever come out of it, and we would just die off. So in order for us to survive as you know, as a populace and really enhance this world, we've got to understand that every time we have this genuine connection, we are saving a life. There's nothing grandiose about it. Like, that's what it is.
And just in so many coaching scenarios and conversations that I've had, it's a trauma or mental health crisis seems to continue to be at the forefront, which is why I just went back to school to get my master's in mental health counseling, because I got tired of referring people out knowing there's a wait list. So being able to, meet needs down the road, I'm not going to dabble when I don't have the expertise quite yet, but gaining a greater understanding. And it really comes down to the fact that the most effective theories and practices go down to what you just essentially said. People matter. People matter, period. Why else are we here? Whatever anyone wants to say about the mysteries of life, if we're not here, just life is hard enough to support each other. What are we doing? Compassion and love are not luxuries to which we get to experience every once in a while. They are essential to our existence. They are essential to our business, but more importantly, the things we are creating as your own individual person, with your superpowers and your gifts. These are essential conditions to really elevate and uplift not just self and just those around you, but again, that third tier of being able to reach people you never may even meet. And that's truly how I don't believe in toxic positivity, but I really do believe that right now, this crisis that we're facing in regards to mental health is a tremendous opportunity for us to get back to what matters, and that's real human connection. It's love of self, love of those around you, and love of people you can never reach.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you shared with us today, Brian. I mean, really, what you do is so impactful. I love Echo and Athena's mission and stance and everything you're about. I love that you're bringing your experience and perspective. We've had an amazing hour of talking with you. I want to open it up to our community members before we run out of time here, so that if there is anything left unsaid or any comments or kudos, that they also feel heard. So Emily, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this hour. And I would say, in listening to you, I would say you've married the poetic with the practical. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Love is action. This is love in action. And that's a beautiful thing to see. And the time element, it only takes a moment to make a difference in someone's life. Time is what it is, but it only takes a moment. So, you know, and Patrick's question really intrigued me, and I'm still with it. I'm still with it, Patrick. And I'm thinking of when I directed theater with kids. And as a manager, I had to have a process. I had to have a rehearsal process for the production to actually happen. And as a leader, I was there to create the safe space for every single actor, child actor, to bring their best. And it took what it took to marry those two things was trust. Trust that it would manifest the way it needed to manifest, the production, whatever it was, and it was enough. It was enough, no matter what it was. And trust in the process itself, that it would come to that. So I'm inspired by today, and I really thank you for it.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here and sharing with me.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you for, again, sharing your story, sharing what you do for people and how you do it. Where can we send people to community to continue the conversation and connect with you? Where's the best place to find you?
You can find me on my website is echoandathena.com. We are actually doing some tweaks to the website right now, but getting on that email list. And right now I'm sending out monthly lessons from Lasso, highlighting Ted Lasso leadership lessons. But also Instagram is always a wonderful place to connect with me via Echo and Athena or Brian John Official are both of my handles on there. So yeah, I would love to connect with these folks. It's been an honor to connect in the group as well as outside the group, and appreciate the work that you're all doing, and just love the love that you guys are sharing in your roles. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, you can find everybody here on the community. We're in LinkedIn together. We're in the small business group community. So definitely reach out. Let's connect. Let's continue this conversation. And I'm excited to check in with everybody next month. So